Welcome to the LeaderGov podcast, America's premier source for local government leadership and teamwork training. And now your host, Bill Stark.
Our special guest today is Terrell Hughes. He's the Director of Public Works for Henrico County, Virginia. That's Richmond. And I'll get Terrell to share a little bit about the county and so forth. But he served in state roles, Virginia VDOT Director and Assistant Director of Administration, appointed in 2020 as Director there at the county for Public Works. And he oversees a big group of services, road, stormwater, and more. I want to get him to share a little bit more about that. And he holds a BS in civil engineering. So it is really great to have you with us, Terrell, and thank you for being a guest today on our workshop. How's it going up in Virginia? Y'all got any snow yet?
Well, apparently earlier this week the beach got snow, but we're a little inland, so we didn't get the snow. So
Oh, wow.
the opposite. We might get it before the beach, but
Yeah.
no. Thanks for the introduction. I just want to let everybody know that photo. You see the difference in gray hair. That was after starting my job, so I completely blame my coworkers for it.
Tell us about Henrico County. Like, where is that near Richmond? And tell us a little bit about the big 4 or 5 buckets of services you all provide in public works there.
Yeah, so no, thanks. But yeah, no, if you're familiar with the Richmond, Virginia area, we're actually about 2 hours south of Washington, D.C., down I-95. So we're on the East Coast. In Virginia, Henrico County is actually we wrap the city of Richmond to the north. Virginia is a little different than a lot of states. So we have independent cities and independent counties. So that's a little different than a lot of other states. I understand you can be both in the city and in the county. So we provide everything, schools. We actually take care of our roads here in Henrico, which is under our Public Works Department, which has about 300 staff members that I lead. We also oversee design development. So as things get built, we review site plans and oversee construction. And then we're the environmental stewards for the county. We buy and sell land for the county. And, like I said, everything associated with roads. We actually have just over $900 million in roadway projects. We've got 100 projects, a lot of drainage issues in the county that we're trying to address. So yeah, little widespread of what we have going on.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for that kind of introduction. And it's good to have you with us today. I know in your career, you've been around the block a few times and you've encountered lots of change. You've probably instigated change and you've probably been asked to facilitate change. And I just want to have a conversation here, ask you a few questions about your background as it relates to change. The first one being, what have you found to be like the hardest part for employees when like a big change is introduced, and how have you tried to help them through that? So what do you see as the big bugaboo for your employees when something big is about to change?
Yeah, no, thanks. So yeah, so I actually came to Henrico County in 2020. So I came in the pandemic. So that was a great time to start a new job when it was really hard getting people. I think I was here for almost a year before I even knew what people actually looked like with, the masks on. But I was fortunate to come in to lead a very, I guess, experienced team. We have a lot of people, and we've seen a lot of retirements over the years, but we have a very large concentration of employees that had been here 20 plus years. So a lot of people who'd been around the block. So one of the I guess this maybe gets to another, but one of my strategies, I didn't want to immediately make changes. I wanted to understand what I was changing before just making changes for change's sake. Because I know myself, I like change. I will change things. So I have to kind of curtail that, understanding that everyone doesn't necessarily want to move at the same pace that I want to move sometimes. So I wanted to take an intentional pause to understand. But I'd say one of the biggest fears, with our team, we just had a lot of folks that you're used to doing it a certain way. There's a certain security in the way you're doing it. You know you're good at doing it the way that you've been doing it. So when someone comes in with a new process or a new tool or new technology, there is definitely a fear that you're what you were once great at, you might not be great at anymore because that change
Mm,
is occurring. And
mm,
I think that's one of the big things that we have to kind of understand is these changes are intended to make things better. They're intended to make your life easier. They're intended to make the process smoother. These so trying to make sure that we're making change that takes great to greater or good to
mm,
great. Um, that I don't want to just change for change's sake. So usually when we identify there's a change, there's obviously something that needs to be changed. So we're identifying, hey, this can be done better. We have to be very careful how we communicate that because if you have a team that takes a lot of pride in their work, suggesting a change may, offend somebody. So I think that
mm.
fear of change and you have there's an opportunity to alienate or offend some of your teammates. So those are some of the things we have to balance out. Um,
Yeah.
so I'll give one quick example. So I mean, a lot of our
Yeah.
team, we were very paperwork heavy. I'm just going to say that. In 2020, I came in and I was amazed at how much paperwork so we're a public works organization. Work assignments were printed and handed out by paper. And it was very hard to understand where everyone was at, where are we going. And someone had to kind of code in all the work that we were doing. And I really wanted to move to more of a digital system, which is a lot of you on here are probably like, yeah, that makes sense from the change standpoint. But we had a lot of people who had been here a long time and they were very resistant. And at one point, a previous director tried to make this change, and people threatened to quit and wanted to leave. And there was a lot of, there was a lot of energy associated. And I think one of the big turning points that we needed to kind of get past was people didn't understand why we were trying to make the change. So
Okay.
we had to really walk people through and communicate what is the why so that people really understood what we were getting at. And I think once people understood the why, the rest kind of made it. And one tip I would give you guys with any presentation with change or any presentation in general is spend a lot of time on why, and then everything else you can just throw a few slides in. Um, if you sell the why, everything else is doesn't really matter. So
Yeah.
so like I mean, I mean, I'm not saying to follow this formula, but I mean, if you have a ten slide deck, maybe seven of those slides are building your case why.
Wow.
The
I
other
was gonna,
three,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
uh,
was going to ask you about that because, like, I was going to ask how detailed did you have to get with your why? Like, was it statistics on the time it takes to get work done? Was it the cost of paperwork? Like, how detailed did you have to get? Seems like the more detailed, probably the better. But I'm curious how much detail you gave on the why.
yeah, and everybody has a different style, so you could be the numbers graphs person. That's not me. I'm more of a picture story person.
Mm,
So I kind of walk through examples of calamities that could have been
mm.
prevented by changing our system. And
Oh,
no names were shared, and we protected the people, and but just really trying to walk people through, hey, these are some of the things that were happening, and this is why this happened, and and then kind of got people on board, going, yeah, we yeah, we don't want those things to happen anymore. Where we were getting backed up, and um, like I said, I think that kind of helped get the buy-in.
mm,
And I think the other big thing is, and you'll see with any team, there's always people who have a little bit more influence than others. Um,
mm.
you and you kind of have to understand who those people are. So when you're working on the why, those are the ones, if you can get to them, they have a little bit more influence in getting people to follow. So, I had a lot of foremen and just people who've been at the county a long time that, when you're saying stuff, people are looking over, they're looking at them, seeing, are they shaking their head? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Oh,
Are they arms? So
oh,
there's a little bit of catering and trying to figure out who the influential people on the team are. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Tell us how you did that. I'm curious. Now you've got a pretty big group, two or 300 folks, but do you sort of naturally know who those leaders are, sort of unspoken, and do you go to them in advance and say, "Hey, here's what we're doing. I'd love you have what do you prep them, or how did that kind of work out for you?"
yeah. So like I said, I didn't jump straight into change. I was new, so I had to try to learn people. One of the benefits of coming in during the pandemic, it did allow me to slow trickle meeting people because we were a little bit more spaced out than normal circumstances. But yeah, a lot of this change was, so I'm in the office a lot of times. I had folks that are in the field, they work out. I need to go there. I need to be,
Mm,
I would, I'd drive by sites, and if I saw somebody, I'd pull over, and I'd show up around lunch break, and we had breakfast, and just being observant, you
mm,
can kind of see who's who in the zoo a little bit, just by who's interacting with who, and who tends to have more of a gravitational pull, and just
mm,
spending time asking questions, and you know doing some things. And yeah, I for people who I knew were a little bit more influential, I would maybe give them a little bit of a sneak peek. Hey
mhm.
man, let me let you in on something. You get the
Yeah,
exclusive, and
yeah,
you know and they might talk about it, but just trying to get a little bit more buy-in, and building a little bit more of that rapport and credibility. Um,
yeah,
but yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question. I wish I had this graph to show, but there's a kind of a famous image of change of the change process where things are going along fine, and then you put change in, and everything goes down, and everybody's sort of almost like not depressed, but there's a sadness, right? Like I used to like the way we did it 3 years ago. There's like a reckoning, like there's a and almost like an unbelief. I can't believe we're doing this, and there's a resistance to reality. And so obviously that requires time, and that requires some hey, it's going to be okay. We did something like this a few years ago. In other words, I guess my question is, during that phase where people are kind of, their senses are heightened, they're like anti-change. Like, do you just give it more time? Are you constantly explaining where we are and why we're doing it? Or how do you get them over that hump of just kind of sadness that we're not doing it the old way anymore? What do you do there?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, progress isn't always linear. Sometimes it's two steps forward, one step back, or one,
Mm,
especially if you're dealing with technology and dealing with human beings. And,
mm,
you know, I mean, we're currently dealing with a situation like that now, where we're trying to become an accredited agency, and dealing with accreditation. There's a lot of documentation, and there's a lot of
mm,
paperwork, and we're streamlining some of our processes so that we meet the accreditation. And when we initially went into accreditation, there was a lot of momentum. Everybody was excited. They're like, yeah, we want to be accredited. And then the work takes longer, and it's more than you want it.
mm,
So you deal with staff turnover, you deal with, life happens, and
mm,
before you know it, your project deadline needs to shift, and you
mm,
lose a little bit of that momentum. But I think that's one of those things where while you're in that transitional phase, it's very important to kind of keep the team energized. So like one of the examples, we knew we weren't really showing what we wanted to show. We weren't finished, and my only plan was to celebrate completion. And
mm.
because we realized it was a little bit more than we thought, when we hit 50%, we did a thing. We
Nice,
celebrated 50%. So
nice.
that wasn't our goal. That's
Yeah,
only half done, but the
yeah,
team needed a little bit of a boost
yeah.
while we were going through the change. And I think that can happen with any change. When you hit a snag, it's trying to find some opportunities to invigorate some positivity.
Mm,
With the technology, effort when we put the new work order system in, we had some folks that immediately took to it. They're like, man, this is just like my iPhone, my smartphone. This makes a
mm,
lot of sense. We had some
mm,
folks that needed some additional training, and
mm,
we needed to find ways to make training available to people because you had people who had pride that didn't want to
mm,
ask.
mm.
You had people falling behind, and we wanted to make sure that we were availing ourselves so that everybody had the tools needed to succeed with the change, to kind of get past that down period.
Yeah.
And maybe there was a learning gap, or maybe we didn't. Everybody has different learning styles. Maybe someone needed a little bit more shadowing time or one-on-one.
Mm,
But just trying to make sure that we provided the resources for everyone to come out of the change successful, because that wasn't the case initially. Um,
yeah.
yeah, if everyone was like a few of the people who hit the ground running, we wouldn't have done any training. But
Right.
you have different people with different backgrounds, so we had to kind of create a program that made sense for the team.
Wow. And so how much of your so you were largely paper dependent up until this point, it sounds like 4, 5, 6 years ago, and now you're using this new system. Obviously, things are more automated, streamlined. What percentage are you sort of still paper dependent, or have you kind of totally gone on your on digital?
Yeah, no, we're fully digital with the work orders, so it's nice. You
Yeah.
can pull up on your phone or your tablet. Um, where the work order is. When the work is complete, they're able to log photos, and there's a lot less work on the back end. So
Mm,
you're in the form, boom, take my photo, show that I'm done, go on to the next project. There's no
yeah.
you don't have to do any coding in the office after the hours, or you're not dealing with a pile of paperwork at the end that you're going through, and then logging
Yeah.
that the work orders are complete. So,
Yeah.
folks, once the jobs are done, they can go home. They don't have to deal with the paperwork anymore. So you're seeing
Yeah.
huge, huge efficiency boosts where, they had to leave maybe an hour or two early to finish up the paperwork in the
Mm,
office. They can stay pretty much till the end of the day and finish all of their work
wow.
orders up. They can,
Wow.
and well, I mean, one of the other big inefficiencies with the paper is they weren't really necessarily geographically sorted. So if you're thinking about like cleaning ditches or mowing or whatever,
Mm,
we had different work orders, and they kind of, if you just kind of go to the next sheet, it might drive you from here to here, and then here to here. By having everything digital, it was showing the geographic location, so you could go to the next nearest site. So there were a lot of efficiencies that we made. So you're talking
yeah.
saving money on fuel, being more
Yeah.
efficient with staff time.
Yeah.
They could plan where they were going to go to lunch.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there was a
The
lot of,
important stuff.
yeah, all the important. I mean, that stuff's huge. I think through my stomach a lot, but so I can relate to that. But yeah, so there's a lot of good things that came about
Yeah, that's
change.
good. Yeah, Lindsay, we're going to go ahead and go into the groups here in just a minute or two. So if you could get those ready, maybe groups of 4, 5, or 6, whatever you want to do. I did kind of have a final question for you, and I'm hopefully I've been listening a little bit here this morning. Y'all, yeah, this afternoon, y'all can help me out. I think I heard you say focus on the why. And in your words, if you have 10 slides, make 7 of them about the why. So your point is just emphasizing why we've got this change. And my word is pre-sell, like you're finding leaders within the organization and kind of laying out the change with them, getting them kind of as your supporters, early supporters, celebrate along the way, and obviously adjust as things. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So we have to be constantly be adjusting. But I love this idea of really focusing on the why and getting key people bought in early in the process. Would you add anything to that, or could you just kind of share with us one sort of final thought of yours as it relates to change here before we wrap up?
Yeah, one quick thing I will say, I kind of mentioned the key leaders. I do value team support. So like sometimes when you're making change, there's people who are experts. I think the expert opinions matter. So you
Mm,
want to make sure that you're gathering input from the experts before just making changes too. Um, I will
mm,
say this though, if you're leading the effort, you still need to own whatever decisions are made. And I'll give you a quick example. One time I had a leader
mm.
that worked for me that would always bring the experts in and then they would vote on what should be done. And then, they would come forward with their idea. And it was not a very effective strategy all of the time because
Mm,
you do a vote, you're kind of weighing everyone's opinions equally. And sometimes there's people in the group that may have a little bit or should have a little bit more input on the
mm,
situation because they have a lot to give. And as a leader, you have to discern that. So at the end of the
mm.
day, as the leader, it's your decision on what change and what path you're going to take. So you want to make sure that you're not deflecting to the team and voting when you're actually the leader. So
Wow.
so that's one other thing I'll just add is
Yeah.
leaders do value subject matter experts, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's your decision.
Wow. I love that. We do a workshop on situational leadership. And one of the leadership styles is democratic leadership, where we get to vote on everything all the time, which is kind of a nice thing, right? Everybody gets an equal voice, and it's kumbaya, and it's awesome. But sometimes the vote isn't really what it should be. And as a leader, you have a vision, and your decision might be different than the votes. I really appreciate you saying that, and that it's ownership. I own the decision. Sometimes I have to make a hard call, or maybe rely on one expert over seven experts, and not necessarily sort of acquiesce to the team. Although, getting the team's input is important. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's another good one here. Thank you. Expert input and owning the decision once you've made the decision. Well, thank you for being with us, Terrell. I really appreciate your insights, and thoughtfulness. Means a lot to us. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the LeaderGov podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And for more information on LeaderGov's workshops and programs for state and local governments, visit www.leadergov.com.